I shouldn't have stayed that late. That's what I kept thinking as the clock passed midnight and her laughter, soft, low, filled the living room. It wasn't wild laughter, just that quiet kind that slips out when someone forgets they're being watched. She was sitting cross-legged on the couch, a glass of red wine between her hands, one bare foot tucked under her. The kind of woman who didn't seem to need to try. Everything about her felt settled, like she'd already lived through the noise and was done pretending. I wasn't supposed to be there alone with her. I'd come by to drop off a charger my friend, her daughter, had left at my place. But her daughter had gone to bed hours ago, and now it was just the two of us. The hum of the refrigerator in the next room, and the faint rain against the window. She looked at me over the rim of her glass. "You're quiet," she said. "I talk too much when I'm nervous," I answered before I could stop myself. She smiled, not in amusement, but like she recognized something. "Then this must be the safest room in the world." Her eyes held mine for a second longer than they should have. I could feel my pulse in my throat. She set her glass down on the coffee table, her nails clicking softly against the surface, and leaned back into the couch. "You're studying architecture, right?" she asked, shifting the conversation like she needed the space. "Trying to," I said. "Mostly just drawing lines that don't mean anything yet." She hummed, thoughtful. "Everything means something when you're young. You just don't know it yet." The way she said it, it wasn't patronizing. It was weary, maybe even kind. Her voice had that late-night rasp people get when they've been laughing too much or not enough. Couldn't tell which. There was a moment where neither of us spoke. I watched her trace the condensation down her glass with her fingertip, slow, absent-minded. My hand twitched like it wanted to follow the motion. "You remind me of someone," she said after a while. "Good someone or bad someone?" "Someone I should have listened to," she murmured. Then she smiled again, too quickly, as if to cover it. The rain picked up, drumming against the window. She reached for the bottle and refilled both glasses, though mine was barely touched. The scent of wine and citrus lotion mixed in the air. Something small and domestic, but charged. "Your mom's out of town for the weekend, isn't she?" she asked. "Yeah." "Why?" She shrugged, swirling the wine. "Just wondering who's going to worry about you if you get caught in the rain on your way home." Her tone was teasing, but underneath it, something wavered. She wasn't flirting, not exactly. It felt more like she was testing how close the moment could stretch before it broke. I laughed softly. "I'll survive. You say that like you've done it before." Another silence. She looked at me, her expression unreadable, then stood and walked toward the kitchen. I heard the soft clink of glass, the pour of wine. When she came back, she set a fresh glass in front of me and met my eyes. "You can stay till morning," she said quietly. I didn't answer. My throat tightened. She turned away before I could see her face, adjusting the throw blanket on the back of the couch, pretending it was nothing. Then, just as I opened my mouth to say something, anything, the hallway light flicked on upstairs. We both froze. Morning came too soft for how hard it was to look at her. Light spilled across the kitchen, thin and gold, touching her shoulders before it reached me. She was already awake, standing by the counter in an oversized sweater, hair loosely tied back. The kind of morning that should have felt harmless, but didn't. "Coffee?" she asked without turning around. "Yeah," I said, voice rough from sleep or nerves. I wasn't sure which. She poured 2 mugs. Steam curled between us, and the smell of roasted beans mixed with the faint scent of her perfume. Something warm and floral that clung to her skin even this early. She handed me a mug, fingers brushing mine. It was accidental, but not entirely. "Did you sleep all right?" she asked. "I didn't sleep much. Too cold. Too awake." She smiled at that, small and knowing. For a second, we were both quiet. Only the clock ticked. Only the sound of her spoon against ceramic filled the room. She told me once that her husband had left when her daughter was 16. "We grew apart," she'd said, which I'd thought was what people said when they didn't want to admit they'd been lonely for years before that. I wanted to ask if she ever dated again. I didn't. Instead, I watched her stir her coffee like it was something that needed fixing. She glanced up suddenly. "You look like you have a question." "Just thinking," I said. "That's dangerous at your age," she replied, lips curving. There it was again, her teasing voice that hid something brittle underneath. I remembered the first time I'd met her, 2 years ago. A quick introduction at her daughter's graduation dinner. She'd worn the same calm smile, the same distant warmth. Back then, I thought she was just another adult too busy being polite. I didn't realize that some silences could pull you in harder than conversation. Now, in her kitchen, I couldn't look away. Her sweater slipped off one shoulder as she reached for a plate. My chest tightened. She caught me looking, just for a second, then turned back to the sink as if she hadn't. "You should probably head out soon," she said softly. "Your mom might wonder. She thinks I stayed at a friend's." Her hand stilled under the running water. "That's not good." "It's not bad either." She laughed quietly, shaking her head. "You really don't make this easy." The air between us thickened. She dried her hands on a towel, then stepped closer. Close enough that I could see the faint freckles on her collarbone. "I shouldn't," she started, then stopped. The rest hung there, unfinished. I could hear her breathing steady, but shallow. My hand twitched again, uselessly at my side. I wanted to touch her, but the room was too still, the moment too fragile to survive it. Instead, she reached out first, brushing a piece of lint from my shirt, her fingers resting for half a heartbeat longer than they needed to. Then she looked up at me, eyes tired, searching. "You really should go," she whispered, but she didn't move her hand. The next time I saw her, it wasn't planned. I'd stopped by to drop off a book her daughter had lent me. I told myself that was all it was, returning something borrowed. But as soon as I knocked, the lie started to itch. She opened the door wearing a white shirt and jeans, barefoot, a pen tucked behind her ear. "You again," she said, surprised but not unhappy. "I found this," I said, holding up the book like proof of innocence. "Come in," she said, voice soft, and stepped aside. The house smelled faintly of rain again, like it remembered that night better than either of us wanted to admit. Her daughter was upstairs, studying. We stayed in the living room, talking low, cautious. I sat on the couch. She leaned against the doorway, arms folded, trying to look casual. "How's the architecture thing going?" "Still drawing lines that don't mean anything," I said. That made her smile barely. A pause. "You shouldn't keep coming here," she said finally, voice steady but eyes restless. "I didn't plan to. And yet." She looked down, exhaled, and crossed the room to sit across from me. Her knee brushed mine for a second, light, but enough to make my heart trip. The air between us grew heavy. "I've been thinking about that night," she said quietly. "So have I." Her eyes flicked up. That was the first time she didn't look away. A phone buzzed on the counter. Sharp. Sudden. We both jumped. It was her daughter's voice from upstairs. "Mom? You seen my charger?" She froze. Then, quick as a reflex, she stood, smoothing her shirt. "In the kitchen drawer," she called out, her tone too bright. The footsteps creaked on the stairs. She looked at me, eyes wide, warning clear. I mouthed, "I'll go." She shook her head, "Stay." The steps stopped halfway. Her daughter muttered something and turned back. Silence again, but the kind that rings in your ears after danger passes. She pressed a hand to her chest and laughed softly, nervous, shaky. "God, this is stupid," she whispered. "Yeah." Neither of us moved. I don't know who leaned in first. It wasn't a decision, it just happened. 1 second she was still. The next she was close enough that I could see the fine lines at the corners of her eyes, the tremor in her lip. "Don't," she whispered. "I'm not." But I was. Her hand came up, stopping me. Not on my chest, but on my jaw, thumb tracing the edge of my face like she was memorizing it. Her touch was steady, but her breath wasn't. "We can't," she said, voice low. "You know that." "I know." Still, neither of us pulled away. Her eyes flicked down to my mouth, then back up. A beat, two. Then the phone buzzed again, splitting the moment clean in half. She stepped back, hand falling away, and turned her face toward the window. "You should go," she said, her voice barely more than a breath. I didn't move right away, because for the first time, I wasn't sure if she wanted me to. It had been a week. A week of pretending that night hadn't happened, that the air between us hadn't changed. But pretending only made it worse. When her message came, "Could you stop by? I need help with something around the house." I stared at my phone too long before typing sure. I told myself it meant nothing. It never meant nothing. When she opened the door, she looked like she hadn't slept much. Her hair was up, loose strands falling around her face. There was paint on her wrist, a faint smudge across her cheek. "The shelf," she said, gesturing toward the living room wall. "I tried to hang it myself. It's crooked." I nodded, not trusting my voice. She hovered while I worked, close enough that I could feel her presence behind me, the small warmth of her body in the quiet room. "Did you tell anyone you were coming here?" she asked suddenly. "No, good." Her tone was sharper than she meant it to be. Regret flashed across her face, but she didn't apologize. The silence filled up again, heavier this time. I could feel her watching me. When I turned, she was staring, eyes unfocused like she'd forgotten to blink. "What?" I asked. "Nothing," she said quickly, then laughed once, brittle. You remind me of how simple things used to be. Is that good or bad?" "Dangerous," she said. I stepped closer before I could stop myself. She didn't move back. "You don't make this easy," she whispered. "You don't want easy," I said. Her lips parted like she wanted to argue, but the words never came. I reached out, brushed a streak of paint from her cheek with my thumb. Her skin was warm under my touch. She caught my wrist but didn't push it away. Her breath hitched. "You shouldn't touch me like that," she murmured. "Then stop me." She didn't. Her hand slid down, still holding my wrist, but lightly now, as if she needed proof that I was real. The air smelled faintly of soap and paint and something faintly sweet to her. "This isn't fair," she said. "To who?" "To either of us." The words were quiet, but her voice trembled. I stepped closer until there was no space left to fill. The shelf, the paint, the reason I was there, all gone. Just her eyes, searching mine for a reason to stop. "You think too much," I said. "And you don't think enough." She reached up, almost without realizing it, fingers grazing the back of my neck. The smallest contact, but it undid everything. We stood there, breath against breath, her forehead nearly touching mine. "Tell me to go," I whispered. She didn't. The room was too still, too charged. I could feel her heartbeat through the space between us, quick and unsure. Her lips parted, words caught, maybe, or a breath. Then from outside, a car door slammed. She flinched. I stepped back, pulse still racing. Her voice was barely a whisper. "You need to leave. Now." I didn't see her again for days. I tried to tell myself I was busy, but every quiet hour circled back to that moment. The way she'd looked at me before the car door slammed, the half-breath that could have turned into something else. When she finally texted, "We need to talk," it felt more like a summons than an invitation. She opened the door before I could knock twice. No smile this time, just tension, drawn tight across her face. "We can't keep pretending," she said. "I'm not pretending. You are." She turned and walked into the kitchen, leaving the door open behind her. I followed. The air was heavy, different, like the house itself knew something had shifted. On the counter lay her phone, screen lit with a half-written message. Her daughter's name at the top. My stomach dropped. "She saw something," she said quietly. "What?" "The text I meant to send you last week. The one that said, 'I can't stop thinking about that night.'" Her voice cracked on the last word. She pressed a hand to her forehead, exhaling shakily. She asked who it was for. I told her it was a friend. Elite. I took a step toward her. "Does she believe you?" "I don't know." She looked up then, eyes bright, not from tears but from sheer exhaustion. "Do you understand what that means if she finds out?" I did, but knowing didn't change the pull between us. She moved past me to grab a glass of water. Her shoulder brushed mine. Barely, but it was enough to make both of us still. "Why did you text me that?" I asked quietly. She swallowed hard. "Because I thought maybe if I said it out loud, it would stop meaning so much." "And did it?" "No," she whispered. The silence after that was almost unbearable. The refrigerator hummed. Rain tapped at the window again, always the rain with her, like it followed us. Her hand trembled as she set down the glass. I reached for it before I could stop myself, steadying her fingers with mine. "You should go," she said. "I don't want to." "You think this is some kind of story that ends well?" Her laugh was small, broken. She stepped back, trying to create distance, but her back hit the counter instead. I didn't move closer, just stood there, breathing the same air, waiting for her to push me away again. She didn't. Instead, she said, "She's going to ask questions. And if I lie again, she'll know. She's too much like me. What do you want me to do?" "Forget this happened." But even as she said it, her hand lifted, fingertips brushing my chest like she didn't mean it. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Please." I caught her wrist gently, my thumb tracing the inside of her pulse. It was racing. "I can't," I said. Her breath stuttered, half fear, half surrender. We stood like that, everything unsaid between us, until she finally looked at me with something raw and final in her eyes. "Then don't come back," she said. But she didn't let go. I stayed away for a week. A week of silence that felt like punishment. But silence doesn't erase what the body remembers. Her voice, the tremor in her breath, the way her hand had refused to let go even as she told me to leave. So when I saw her again, by accident or maybe fate had a sense of humor, it felt like the air between us hadn't moved at all. She was in the bookstore downtown, hair up, reading glasses slipping down her nose. She looked normal, safe, and that made it worse. Her eyes met mine across the aisle. No surprise. Just resignation, like she'd been waiting for this to happen. She set the book down slowly. "You shouldn't be here. I didn't plan it. You said that before." Outside, the sky was turning gray again. We ended up under the awning, the first drops of rain hitting the pavement. "You meant what you said," I told her. "I did." "Then why are you shaking?" Her hands were in her pockets, but I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she tried to hide the smallest things. "You think this is easy for me?" she said, voice low, unsteady. "You think I don't wake up every morning trying to convince myself that night didn't matter?" I stepped closer. "Then stop pretending." The rain picked up. People hurried past us, but the sound of it drowned everything else. She looked at me, and for the first time she didn't look away. "You don't understand what it costs," she said. "Then tell me." She laughed once, dry, almost angry. "My daughter, my reputation, the way people will look at me. You get to walk away clean. I don't. I'm not walking away." Her breath caught at that, and I saw it. How much she wanted to believe me. When the thunder rolled, she flinched, and I reached out, instinct more than thought. My fingers brushed the back of her neck, tracing the line of her jaw as she turned toward me. For a second, everything stopped. The street noise, the rain, the fear. Just us. "Say you don't want this," I whispered. Her eyes glistened, not with tears, but something sharper. She shook her head once, barely. "I can't," she said. That was all it took. I moved closer, her breath warm against my mouth, her hands fisting in my jacket like she was holding herself together. She leaned in, slowly, carefully, like she wanted to make sure the world didn't end when she did. But just before our lips met, she stopped. Her forehead rested against mine. Her voice was a tremor. "If we cross that line, it's not just a secret anymore. It's real." I swallowed hard. "Then let it be real." She exhaled, half relief, half surrender, and finally closed the distance between us. The kiss wasn't perfect. It wasn't neat or gentle. It was everything we'd both been too afraid to say. When it broke, she stayed close, her voice a whisper against my skin. "Now you understand," she said. And for the first time I did. The rain had stopped by the time we found ourselves walking again, nowhere in particular, just moving because stopping felt too final. The city smelled of wet pavement and late coffee. Her hand brushed mine once, twice, until finally, it stayed. We didn't talk for a while. There wasn't much left to explain. When we reached her car, she leaned against the door, eyes searching mine. "You shouldn't be here," she said again. But this time, there was no conviction behind it. "I know." She smiled faintly, tired. "And yet," the word hung there between us, the same one that had followed us through almost every silence, every moment that nearly broke. And yet, she reached up, fingertips grazing the side of my face, tracing the faint stubble along my jaw. It wasn't about desire anymore, not really. It was recognition, the quiet kind that happens when two people finally stop fighting what's already true. "You make me forget how old I am," she said. I shook my head. "You make me forget how young I am." That made her laugh soft and real, the kind of laugh that pulled me in closer before I even realized I'd moved. I wrapped my arms around her, and she didn't resist. Her body fit against mine like she'd been carrying the shape of this moment for years. She exhaled against my neck, the sound small and steady. For a long while, neither of us spoke. Just the sound of our breathing, the warmth of her hand sliding into mine, the world narrowing down to that. When she finally pulled back, her eyes were clear. No fear, no shame, just acceptance. "This doesn't make sense," she said. "Maybe it doesn't have to." She nodded slowly, then rested her forehead against mine. "If we do this," she whispered, "we do it quietly, carefully. No lies, no hiding. Just honesty." "Okay," I said. "I can live with that." She smiled, small but certain. "Then maybe we'll be all right." Back at her house, she poured 2 cups of tea instead of wine. The same couch, the same quiet, but everything felt different. I watched her move, barefoot, hair loose now, light catching on the edge of her cheekbone. She sat beside me, not close enough to touch, until I reached over and took her hand. She let me. No ruse, no pretending. Just 2 people sitting in the soft after of something that finally found its place. Outside, the sky cleared. The moonlight stretched across the floor, reaching both of us at once. She leaned her head on my shoulder. "I don't know where this goes," she said. I smiled, eyes closed. "Let's find out." Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?